If you've ever played soccer, imagine trying to score a goal as a team with boxes over your heads. Unfortunately, that's how disaster recovery works now. After a disaster, hundreds of organizations converge on the field to clean up. Although each organization is working towards the same goal, they don't communicate, coordinate, or work together easily. They can't see what their teammates are doing, even though they might literally be working side by side. Sometimes they duplicate efforts, and nobody can see the entire field at once.
That's why we created CrisisCleanup.org. Crisis Cleanup takes the box off your head, allowing relief organizations to see the entire game and work together with teammates. Crisis Cleanup is a new way of coordinating disaster recovery efforts, using the collaborative power of the internet to break down barriers among recovery organizations.
And we need you to be a part of the game. By donating to Crisis Cleanup, you will be helping literally thousands of families in cities across the country and across the world by facilitating unprecedented coordination among organizations like AmeriCorps, the United Way, Catholic Charities, the United Methodists, Islamic Relief, Mormon Helping Hands, Nahama, 211 operators, and many others.
Here's how it has worked in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Mississippi, and Georgia. After hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, fires, and earthquakes, volunteers from churches, synagogues, hotlines like 211, and other community organizations organize to help those in need.
Even after phone lines and the internet come back online, coordinating after a disaster is challenging. Volunteers arrive on the scene, but need to know who needs help. Devastated neighborhoods are often overwhelmed by the damage, even as thousands of volunteers sit idle waiting for direction. The lists of people who need help often don't end up in the hands of the waiting volunteers. CrisisCleanup.org connects relief organizations with the people who need help by taking a Craigslist approach to disaster recovery.
Organizations that are aware of a need enter the information in the system. Then organizations with capacity help as soon as they can. When everyone uses the system, tens of thousands of volunteers from hundreds of organizations go straight to work, and each organization knows where the others are working. Crisis Cleanup makes coordination and communication seamless, while giving voluntary organizations maximum flexibility to respond as they see fit.
Individuals needing assistance will often call as many organizations as possible in the hope that they'll receive help faster. While we can't blame them, this causes inefficiency and duplication of efforts when two or more organizations show up at the same house. But with Crisis Cleanup, if a person calls in twice, even to different organizations, the system will find the existing record and avoid duplicating efforts.
After a disaster, volunteers from dozens of organizations canvass neighborhoods to assess needs, but don't coordinate with one another. Without coordination, some streets are canvassed dozens of times, while other streets are ignored. But now, with Crisis Cleanup, volunteers will be able to see which streets have been canvassed in real time, allowing them to focus on areas that have not been assessed.
Any local or national recovery organization can use Crisis Cleanup. 211 can perform an assessment over the phone and enter the information into the system. Relief organization volunteers can use a smartphone or tablet to report people who need help. Citizens will be able to report damage using just a touch-tone phone, sharing vital information with community leaders and relief agencies across the region, even as the disaster is unfolding.
Crisis Cleanup is open source. Relief organizations may join Crisis Cleanup for free if they meet 3 requirements. First, your organization must have a physical presence in the area. Second, it must do this type of work, including canvassing, assessments, muckouts, or rebuilding. Third, it must be a nonprofit member of VOAD, a government agency, or come recommended by a VOAD or government agency.
Crisis Cleanup has already helped more than 100 organizations send more than 30,000 volunteers to more than 6,000 families in 5 states during 4 separate disasters. We recently talked with leaders from a few of the organizations who used Crisis Cleanup.
Good morning. My name is John Wallace, and I'm the former acting regional voluntary agencies liaison for FEMA Region 8. I was deployed in the state of New York as affected by Hurricane Sandy. One of my jobs was to try to get a handle on which of the voluntary and the faith-based groups were doing the muckouts, and it was nearly impossible. The disaster strikes and they act, and they really didn't have time to answer the questions from the government about what they're doing. And I was just amazed, because it's providing good information, and it provides a way to coordinate in the field through an iPad or whatever people had in the field. They could participate, whatever their organization was, so long as they had a track record and an association with National VOAD or some level of credibility. But they could utilize this system in the field, bringing immediate information to them on what needed to be done and where and who had requested. And then when the time was right, how many volunteers served, how many hours, which homes and neighborhoods had been addressed and people assisted, what kind of assistance was provided. And people called in to 211 and said, I need to be mucked out. And the 211 folks entered the data into the collaborative work order system. And there it was, available for folks to go out and assist applicants. It's appropriate to use technology to make our work easier. This is a system that is just awesome. I'm gushing, but it's not just gushing, it's sincerity. And it's I know a good thing when I see it.
Hi, I'm Laura Marks. I'm the Executive Director for New Jersey 211 Partnership. And during a disaster, we are one of the public portals for people to get information, education, and in this case, register for cleanup. We have a long history of helping people kind of connect with the faith-based community in terms of cleanup. And we've always felt like there was a gap in terms of really being able to oversee it and make sure that there's not duplication of service and that residents are really getting helped in the best way possible. So with crisis cleanup, we've really found that this is the answer. We're able to enter information about callers. We're able to add fields if we need to, if we realize that there's something about that particular disaster that's different than others. And then organizations are able to take that information and really act on it. And for us, probably the best part is that we can go back into the system and really be able to determine who is assigned that task. So, if someone calls us back and says, I haven't heard from anyone yet, we're able to go into the system and be able to see that a certain organization is assigned to that home for cleanup, and whether it's been completed, whether it's in progress, or whether no one's been assigned to it yet. So it's a great management tool from an overall administrative perspective, but on a real person perspective, I think we can provide reassurance and set an expectation for the caller that's really important. So, one of the other benefits of crisis cleanup is that it's a really excellent way to be able to see the trends of what people's needs are in the community. So if there's a lot of fallen trees and debris removal that's not happening, we're able to then, and not getting addressed by the organizations that are now in New Jersey, we're able to report that back to the state. And in some cases, even with Hurricane Sandy this year, the state was able to go to those municipalities and ask for help with debris removal. And I think, having that kind of collaboration, it's not just about, it's not just about 211, it's not just about the faith-based organizations, but it's us working with the state VOAD and with the local municipalities and with state officials to really make the system work in a really efficient way.
I'm Bob De Rosa, and I'm part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and represent them in the volunteer organizations active in disaster, helping to manage the church's responses to disasters in New York State. Fortunately, we were able to use the crisis cleanup system to assist us in doing that. I think it did three things for us, really. It allowed us to raise awareness. In other words, through the visibility, we could see where the problems were, and people in the communities were able to see where the problems were in their own communities. People were able to identify themselves, and so they were able to get to us and tell us what the problem was and where it was. And then we were able to coordinate the efforts of so many different organizations. But the community needs so much more than just us. By using crisis cleanup, we were able to get all of the different orders into a single place to give it visibility. And through all of that collaboration, we were able to respond much more effectively.
I'm Aaron Titus, Project Manager for Crisis Cleanup. During Hurricane Sandy, it was my job to get 30,000 volunteers from 100 organizations to more than 5,000 locations across a 500-mile arc in 8 weeks. How do you do that? Well, the answer is you don't. You develop tools that will allow organizations to organize themselves. And with Crisis Cleanup, that's exactly what we did. Our dedicated volunteers like Jeremy Pack, Chris Wood, Andy Gimma, Bruce Christensen, and many others have spent hundreds of hours developing Crisis Cleanup. But I'll tell you what, we need some funding, and we need your help to get it done. And we have so much more that we need to get done before the next hurricane, or tornado, or earthquake, or other crisis. For example, we want to develop a mobile interface that will allow volunteers to do real-time canvassing and work order management. We'd like to integrate with apps like Voluntarily and develop a system that will allow residents to report damage using a touch-tone telephone. And we also need to adapt Crisis Cleanup for long-term recovery, which takes months and years after a hurricane or other major disaster happens before the real cleanup and the real recovery happens. Thank you so much. Please go to crisiscleanup.org/donate and donate $25 or $50 or more if you can. And then share this video with friends and family on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media. On behalf of so many families who have been affected by recent disasters, thank you very much for your support.